Today you will be able to identify and apply the identity and inverse properties of addition and multiplication, as well as the multiplicative property of 0. Your foldable will include the 3 properties and at least 4 examples of each. Let's take a look at this activator and just see what we can figure out. Okay, if I look at this first equation here, I see that it is addition. So if I come over here, I can eliminate multiplicative because that has the word multiply in it. So I've got 2. I've got additive inverse and additive identity. Well, 7 plus 0 equals 7. So 7 is keeping its identity. So I believe that it would be the additive identity. 3 times 1 equals 3. Okay, it's multiplication and 3 is keeping its identity. So I believe that that would be the multiplicative identity property. So let's draw a line here, and we said this was here. Now, 1/4 times 4 over 1 equals 1. Well, I know that this is the reciprocal. This is the opposite, and it equals 1. So it's not adding, and it's not multiplying and giving me 0. So I'm thinking this is probably the multiplicative inverse, because 1 over 4 and 4 over 1 are the reverse of each other. Alright, so let's keep going. 8 times 0 equals 8 equals 0. So since that is giving me 0 in its multiplication, I'm pretty certain it's this one. And finally, 9 plus a negative 9, well, I know they're opposites and they're giving me 9. So I think that would be the additive inverse. It's the reverse. Okay, so now on to your foldable. First, we're going to start with the identity property, then move on to the inverse, and then to the 0 property. So inside your foldable, where we have the identity property, you want to make sure that you have your plus sign on the left and your multiplication sign on the right. And our definition for the identity property is basically, we think of identity. How are you identified? Well, you're identified by your name. That's how numbers are identified. So the sum of any real number and 0 equals the real number. Hope you don't mind Mrs. Jordan doing her abbreviations or texting symbols. So here is an example that you can include. 5 plus 0 equals 5. And of course you can come up with your own, because you are supposed to have 4 examples. So here's another one to help you out. So 7 plus what would be 7? Sure, 0. 2 plus 0 would be what? Okay, 2. And then you can add your 4th example. Now let's move over to the multiplication side. Same thing. The product of any real number and 1 equals the real number. So again, identity, you're identified by your name. The numbers are identified by their name. They keep their identity. So 7 times 1 equals 7, and 1 times 3 equals 3, and 4 times 1 would equal 4. So that's the identity property. So same name. Okay, so moving on. Here are some other examples that if you want to work them, you certainly can. You don't have to though, but just to give you a little practice. Now let's move on. Here we have our inverse property. Now the inverse property for addition, you add the opposites and it will equal 0. So 5 plus negative 5 equals 0. A plus what? Yeah, negative A equals 0. And 12 plus negative 12 equals 0. You can give this one a try and add it as your 4th problem inside your foldable. Now, for multiplying reciprocals, that will give you 1 for the inverse property of multiplication. So here 4 over 3, the reciprocal of that, or the multiplicative inverse of that, is 3/4. You multiply then straight across, you get 12 over 12, which equals 1. Here, 2/5, the reciprocal is 5/2, 2/5. 2 times 5 is 10, 5 times 2 is 10, 10 over 10 is 1. Now, you give it a try. 1/3, what would the reciprocal be? You got it, 3 over 1. And then here, you can use this as your fourth example, or you can come up with your own. So multiplicative inverse, when you hear that, it just is the same as asking for the reciprocal. That's all, just the reverse. All right, so let's move on. The last one property for today is the multiplicative property of 0. The property of any real number and 0 is 0. So n times 0, 0. 9 times 0, 0. 0 times 17, 0, and so forth. So what about 6 times 5 times 0 times 4? Yep, it's still 0. And division by 0 is not possible. It is undefined. Okay, looking here at a few examples, let's see if you could identify them. We've got the identity property of addition, multiplication, multiplicative property of 0, inverse of multiplication, and inverse of addition. Now again, if you want to copy these in your notebook and then identify them, that's fine, or you can just do it along with me. So the identity property of addition. So I know that the number keeps its identity. And here is an addition sign down here. So I think that would work there. All right. Here I have 25 times 0 equals 0. Okay, so that's not going to be an identity property of addition. Oh, okay, there's one. 2 plus 0 equals 2. So 2 is keeping its identity. Now let's find the identity property of multiplication, where the number is keeping its identity with multiplying. Okay, so that's multiplying, but the number's not. 5/6 isn't keeping its identity. 5/9 isn't keeping its identity. Ooh, 2 definitely isn't keeping its identity. Oh, okay, here we go. Multiplicative property of, whoops, not that one. Identity property of multiplication. So 9 is keeping its identity. And then over here, 13 is keeping its identity. All right, so now let's get back to the multiplicative property of 0, where anytime you multiply a number by 0, you get 0. So here's one, and here's, whoops, and here's another one. But then we have the inverse property of multiplication. So these two are addition, so they're out. So these two are multiplying, and we do have the reciprocals of 5/6 is 6/5, and 5/9 is 9/5. So that's going to be my inverse property of multiplication there. And then finally, I see that if I'm adding the opposite of 3, I get 0. So that gives me my inverse property of addition, and same thing here. So I hope you did well with that. So now to finish up and reinforce what you put in your foldable and what we did together, go back to Edmodo and give this quiz a try. You'll see the link for Map Op Quiz. Click on it and take the quiz. Do your best and keep on keeping on with those properties.